Hello there, everyone. This is Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist, and welcome to the Mad Science Lab podcast. Today, we are continuing the My Thoughts series, and here to break down the New York Jets is Chris Buonagura. After all that trying to practice your last name, leave it to me to screw up the word Chris. Welcome in, Chris. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I've never heard anyone botch Chris before.
Yeah,
Definitely the
no, that's
last name.
awesome. I was so focused on not screwing up your last name, I forgot how to say Chris. That's awesome. Yeah, it's been a good day. Thanks for joining me, though.
Yeah, of course.
Alrighty, let's get right into it here with the New York Jets, a team I instantly dislike just based on Aaron Rodgers, but that's just me. Quarterback room is Aaron Rodgers as your newly acquired starter, with the backup is high profile, what is he, third year now? Third year?
Third year.
Yeah, Zach Wilson. What are your thoughts on these two here?
Yeah, so I mean, I dislike the Jets also, but that's after being a fan of them for all 26 years of my life.
That's fair.
They just have that impact. But I mean, the quarterback room, you obviously have to be excited for a fresh start for Rodgers. We've seen back and forth success now with veteran quarterbacks going to new teams. Of course, Stafford and Brady did very well. The one thing I'll say is the potency of this offense and the receiving core he has as a whole is probably better than what we've seen recently in Green Bay. And if any of the narratives around Rodgers just being happier to not be with Green Bay anymore and being reunited with Hackett and a lot of his guys like Alan Lazard, then, we could see a nice efficiency spike here where Rodgers is a back end QB1 again. But without the rushing and with the older age, I'm certainly not propping him too far up.
I've never seen anything like this in football. It's like something you see in basketball where the guy makes a super team and just brings all his friends to the team. I've never seen a player do this before, but I love the offense, like in the weapons. I'm just not sold on Rodgers. I don't think he's what he used to be. I get he's an obvious upgrade over Zach Wilson. At this point in his career, I don't think he's that much better than Mike White was. I mean, I get it. He's probably still an upgrade, but I have more confidence in these weapons than I do in him being useful. But that could just have been because, like you said, he was miserable in Green Bay and just packed it in and decided to just move on and not really try.
Yeah, I'll say this. The Jets are very likely looking to lean on the run. They obviously have a stud in Brees Hall, and they added Israel Abanikanda in the 5th round, despite already having Knight and Carter. They're probably going to get most of their yards on the ground. Rodgers is there for third down. He's there for the red zone. So to see him as a guy who could maybe score 280 fantasy points, similar to what Goff scored last year, and finish around like QB 13, QB 14, that's reasonable. But I agree with what you said. Just giving me the age and some of what we've seen from him with the play the last 2 years, like everyone makes fun of him for throwing it out of bounds in big moments on 4th down because he doesn't want to log interceptions. And that's true. He definitely does play a little too safe.
Yeah, no showing off there. I can't say Chris, but you can say Abanaconda, as now you're just showing off. I guess that'll transition us into the running back room. Brees Hall is the obvious stud here. I worry he's not going to be ready for the beginning of the season, but luckily they have a pretty loaded running back room behind him. Zonovan Knight showed flashes last year. Michael Carter showed flashes the year before, and I really had high hopes for Izzy Abanaconda. I don't like that he's seemingly buried to number 4 on this depth chart, but if Hall misses some games or isn't up to full speed, they definitely have the backups here to help carry the load. How do you think this group of 4 here shakes out?
Yeah, I think for Carter and Abanikanda and even Knight in deeper formats, in Dynasty, in very deep best ball, you do want to take stabs at these guys because if Hall does have a prolonged absence in September or he has to ramp up, again, the Jets very much want to run. Last season, they were doing pretty well. And part of the reason why they fell apart, as much as everyone wants to point the finger to Zach Wilson, when Brees Hall went down, that was the engine of their offense. And, Knight definitely did okay when given the ball, but Michael Carter also got hurt. When they couldn't run, they couldn't function. And I definitely love Brees Hall, even at his current cost, despite the injury concerns. there's a lot of research that goes into injury recovery in sports with the ACL, and the things going in Hall's favor. It's always good to be younger. He's very young. It's always good to be a freak, insane athlete, which he is. He ran a 4.3940. He's in that Saquon Barkley tier of freak size adjusted athleticism. The timing on the injury puts him just after 9 months for week one, which is good. And it was just an ACL. And I know just an ACL is a lot, but there was no MCL, there was
No,
no
no.
meniscus, there was no complications. This isn't Javonte Williams.
Exactly who I was going to say. If you're
Yeah.
right. I know it sounds bad to say it's just an ACL, but no MCL, no LCL, no other ligaments. Damn, you're right.
Yeah, even if he's slow in September, what he can potentially do for you from October to late December in fantasy is worth it. And you can find other guys to bridge your way to Hall, especially in like best ball. Brees Hall could be one of those guys where when we look at the stats, it's like from week 9 to week 17, he was the RB1 overall in points per game, right? Even though weeks 1 through 8, maybe he was outside the top 12 because they took him off the field a lot.
Well, yeah, he could do in a half a season what most guys can do. And look at what was it, 2 years ago or last year that Derrick Henry went down. And in the 9 weeks where he played, he still finished as a top 12 RB just because his 9 weeks were that good. So
Yeah.
I could see that being with Hall. He misses 4 games, whatever. He could still finish as a top 5 or 6, even though he played 4 games less.
Yeah, I don't think he misses any games, but I do think in September they watch his workload and ramp him up. It's also the time of year where it's much easier to throw, and it's like highlight month. It's fantasy football month, so they might come out just heaving it with Rodgers to make fans happy, to make Woody Johnson happy. But then come late November when it gets colder, let's give it a Brees Hall.
The wide receiver room is a little more interesting. We have Garrett Wilson, who's the unquestioned, well, should be the unquestioned one. Hopefully, he has a good rapport with Rodgers. We know Rodgers can be a bit finicky, so it would be really a shame to see him spoiled here. We have Corey Davis, Alan Lazard, Mecole Hardman, and Denzel Mims. Believe they also added in Randall Cobbs and anybody else Aaron Rodgers has decided to bring with him. What are your thoughts on this group here?
Yeah, the one thing that really pops out is depth, because a lot of receiving rooms, once one or two guys go down, they don't have anyone competent to put on the field. Denzel Mims and Mecole Hardman might not be the most flashy guys, but if they have to start, they certainly are at least NFL caliber. I do think Corey Davis restructures and stays with the team, but he's very much just a situational wide receiver for. I think it's going to shake out to be obviously Wilson as the clear cut one. He's obviously a stud. And I think Lazard works out as a very solid number 2 on that team, the way he was for years with Green Bay across from Adams. And I wouldn't be shocked if as a player he takes a slight step up. I'm not saying anything drastic for fantasy football, but for real life football, I think he will certainly help this offense function.
Yeah. It's definitely, there's some depth there. I think Wilson is by far the most fantasy relevant. Like you said, Lazard could have some good weeks. Corey Davis, I'm not all that fond of, and the rest, are going to see time here and there. We have a really crowded tight end room, though. That's for sure. I had high hopes for Jeremy Ruckert. Never really seen an opportunity. Then they bring Conklin in, who had his good weeks and his down weeks. They bring in CJ Uzama, also a guy who's hit and miss. And then they take a late round shot on Zach Kuntz, who I liked him and I didn't like him. I know he had almost no production at Old Dominion throughout his college career, but he has some pretty good athletic numbers, athleticism-wise. On the other hand, he's pretty small for a tight end. What do you think of these four? How does this shake out?
Yeah, this tight end room reeks of Joe Douglas and his experience in with Philly, and learning that you always want to have tight ends that can do everything, block, run routes, this and that, and you want to have depth. So you see with Ruckert, with Kuntz, with Uzama, taking these cheap darts at big size speed guys that can block for you, that you can use here and there for big plays, maybe handoffs, but these aren't consistent receivers. None of them really excite me in fantasy. You can still take some very deep darts on Uzama and Kuntz in your 40-person fantasy. dynasty leagues. But
Yeah.
otherwise, Conklin is the guy who is at least on the radar, even though it's a small blip. He's their smaller move tight end, but you never want to trust these guys for fantasy that are
No.
undersized and too slow because they're never good long term. Just think of Trey Burton, who was amazing for Philly like 6 years ago and then never did anything for the Bears. Conklin's last 2 seasons were great. I'm not shocked if he fails to do it a third year.
Yeah. I started Conklin, I think, a few weeks last year due to injury or the Cole Kmet saga of putting up goose eggs all month long to start the season. But yeah, he's not someone I really, wanted to trust. He's just, the deeper leagues like Scott Fishbowl, sometimes you have to start a player you don't want to. Makes sense there. Okay. Based on what you think the eventual ADP will be and where these guys go in drafts, who are you most likely to target on the Jets?
I'm still going to just tried and true be Brees Hall. He's the guy that's going to fall a few spots because people are scared of the ACL. But I'm just looking at the upside.
I think for me, it's going to be the other three running backs. I don't quite know who's going to shake out as the RB2, but I'm kind of hedging my bet that for at least the beginning part of the season, I want whoever might be taking a little bit off the plate of Brees Hall, because I think they're going to ease him into it, like you said, September, early in the season, whatnot. So I think I might take some dart throws on those guys. Conversely, who's someone you think you're going to be looking to avoid?
So same thing with cost. Someone that up to this point I haven't drafted much of. I do a lot of best ball is Garrett Wilson. As much as I love him, I think he's an absolute stud. He's going to be one of the next true alpha wide receivers in the NFL. He's just already being drafted as it. He's wide receiver 9 in most best ball drafts, and that's just very pricey for me. He goes before Jalen Waddle. I can't buy him at his cost, but he is very, very good.
For me, the easy one to avoid is Rodgers. He hasn't had a good season in a couple of years. I know he was in the wide receiver quarterback 2 range. He's creeping up to the ADP of, like, last I looked, he was like 13, 14, 15 range. He's starting to, go on the edge where I could, he's just not comfortable for me. I don't want to draft him as a QB1. I don't mind him as my second QB in Superflex. I don't want to pay anywhere near a top 15 price for him. He's someone I'd just rather wait and take a cheaper option, or I'd rather pay up for the tier above him. I'm out on him. Last year they were 10th in the AFC. Where do you see them finishing in the division this year?
So for in the AFC East, I could see them competing for as high as second.
Yeah.
I don't see them winning it. It'll be the Bills or the Dolphins, but one of those two teams is also going to disappoint one way or the other.
Yeah. I think the Bills win it pretty easily, but I think the Patriots are last pretty easily, and I think the Dolphins have a lot of question marks. They could finish second, they could finish as low as fourth. It all depends. You never know with Tua. The offense is pretty good. It's just there's a lot of uncertainty there. Last year, 7 wins. This year, over, under, or the same.
I'd say over. I'll give them 9 or 10.
9 or 10. Okay. I think I like, I was thinking more like 8 or 9, but once again, somewhere in the second or third range in the AFC. Do you think there's a sleeper on this team anywhere?
If there were a sleeper, I would go with kind of one of your targets. I still believe in Michael Carter.
Yeah.
I think drafting a Bonnie Condo was Carter insurance, not Hall insurance. And if Hall does go down, you probably see Carter at least absorbing the third round role and the high priority fantasy stuff like pass catching.
Yeah.
And he is a very good player. He's just a fringe draft pick, and he's been hurt.
Yeah, I have a friend who writes for the Jets, and that's what his thought was, that Knight is there to be the backup behind Hall, and Abanaconda is there to be the backup to Carter. So it's kind of a 1-2 with a 1-2 backup situation. So it's not like, if Brees goes down, I don't think Abanaconda jumps into his role. I think he's there if Carter goes down. So I think, yeah, I don't mind Zonovan Knight because, like I said, I'm not expecting Hall to be full speed ahead to start. And I think Knight might have a few usable weeks early on in the season.
Yeah,
So,
no, it's totally fair. But Michael Carter is my go-to of the
yeah,
Jets backups.
fair enough. All right, Chris, thank you very much for joining me. You want to take a second here to tell everyone where they can find your work?
Yeah, so I work with Player Profiler. You can find me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. live on their Discord stream. We also post the show to YouTube on Mondays, and I'm on Twitter at Value Draft Picks.
Awesome. Thank you very much. This has been my thoughts on the New York Jets with Chris Buonagura. I didn't mispronounce Chris this time. Thank
You
you
got
very
both
much.
right.
Thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks again, Chris, for joining me. This has been the Mad Science Lab podcast. Take care, everyone.